Many people are familiar with the story of Atlantis, the legendary sunken city as described by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. Till this day, opinion is still divided as to whether this story should be understood literally or taken merely as a morality tale. Further east, in the subcontinent of India, is a similar tale, though it probably is less well known compared to that of Atlantis. This is the lost continent of Lemuria, frequently connected to the legend of Kumari Kandam by speakers of the Tamil language. It may come as a surprise that for a brief moment in history, Lemuria gained a greater acceptance within the scientific and scholarly community. In fact, Lemuria was not originally an idea originating from the occult world, or from lost ancient Egyptian sources as was Plato's Atlantis, but from the minds of leading scientific thinkers. Are you ready to learn more about the ancient Lemuria? Okay then, let's begin. In the late 1800s, British lawyer and zoologist Philip Lutley Sclater makes a curious observation. He observed that across Madagascar, India and the islands of the Pacific lands, separated by hundreds of miles of impassable oceans, lemurs were encountered. He then proposed a theory that has since taken on a life of its own. Sclater, in concurrence with many other thinkers of the time, proposed that these land masses, now separated by oceans, had once been a part of a larger continent in the Indian Ocean, submerged beneath the ocean. Sclater named this hypothetical missing continent Lemuria, after the lemur, and the name has stuck since then. Sclater theories first became popular in 1864, when wrote a paper titled The Mammals of Madagascar, and had it published in the Quarterly Journal of Science. He observed that there were many more species of lemur in Madagascar than there were in either Africa or India, thus claiming that Madagascar was the animal's original homeland. Moreover, he proposed that what had allowed lemurs to first migrate to India and Africa from Madagascar long ago was a now lost landmass stretching across the southern Indian Ocean in a triangular shape. This continent of Lemuria, Sclater suggested, touched India's southern point, southern Africa and western Australia, and eventually sank to the ocean floor. Contemporary Ernst Haeckel, a German biologist, naturalist and physician, arrived at the same conclusion and theorized that the missing link between ape and man had once inhabited this sunken land. Since then, the lost continent of Lemuria has fallen squarely outside the boundaries of science for seemingly sound reasons. Firstly, Sclater's hypothesis of a missing continent at the bottom of the Indian Ocean is a redundant explanation for the presence of lemurs and other terrestrial species on lands separated by oceans, as it is common knowledge that the continents had drifted to their present positions over millions of years. And secondly, no missing continent is needed to explain the lack of the intermediate forms or the missing link, for such fossils have been found all over the African continent during the last century. Ernst Haeckel began publishing work claiming that Lemuria was what allowed humans to first migrate out of Asia and into Africa. He even suggested that Lemuria, aka Paradise, may have been the very cradle of humankind itself, as he wrote in 1817. The probable primeval home or paradise is here assumed to be Lemuria, a tropical continent at present lying below the level of the Indian Ocean, the former existence of which is the Tertiary period seems very probable from numerous facts in animal and vegetable geography. With help from Haeckel, Lemuria theories persisted throughout the 1800s and into the early 1900s, and often discussed alongside the myth of Kumari Kandam, a proposed lost continent in the Indian Ocean that once housed a Tamil civilization. This was before modern science discovered ancient human remains in Africa that suggested that continent was actually the cradle of humankind. This was also before modern seismologists understood how plate tectonics moved the once connected continents away from each other into their present forms. Without such knowledge, many continued to embrace the notion of Lemuria, especially after Russian occultist, medium and author Elena Blavatsky published The Sacred Doctrine in 1888. This book proposed the idea that there were once 7 ancient races of humanity and that Lemuria had been the home of one of them. This 15-foot-tall, 4-armed, hermaphroditic race flourished alongside the dinosaurs, Blavatsky said. Afterward, Lemuria, understandably, found its way into novels, movies and comic books well into the 1940s. Many people saw these works of fiction and wondered where authors and filmmakers got these fanciful ideas. Well, they got their ideas from scientists and writers about 75 years before. Coming back in the recent year of 2013, any scientific theories of a lost continent and land bridge responsible for the migration of lemurs is gone. However, geologists have now discovered traces of a lost continent in the Indian Ocean. Scientists found fragments of granite in the ocean south of India, along a shelf that extends hundreds of miles south of the country towards Mauritius. On Mauritius, geologists found zircon, despite the fact that the island only came into being 2 million years ago, when thanks to plate tectonics and volcanoes, it slowly rose out of the Indian Ocean as a small landmass. However, the zircon they found there dated to 3 billion years ago, eons before the island had even formed. What this meant, scientists theorized, was that the zircon had come from a much older landmass that long ago sank into the Indian Ocean. Sclater's story about Lemuria was almost true. Rather than call this discovery Lemuria, geologists named the proposed lost continent Mauritia. Based on plate tectonics and geological data, Mauritia disappeared into the Indian Ocean around 84 million years ago, when this region of Earth was still turning into the shape it holds today. And while this generally lines up with what Sclater had once claimed, the new evidence puts the notion of an ancient race of Lemurians that evolved into lemurs the rest. Mauritia disappeared 84 million years ago, but lemurs didn't evolve on Madagascar until about 54 million years ago, when they swam to the island from mainland Africa. Nevertheless, Sclater and some of the other scientists of the mid-1800s were partially right about Lemuria despite their limited knowledge. A lost continent didn't suddenly sink into the Indian Ocean and vanish without a trace. But long ago there was something there, something now gone forever. In 1899, Frederick Spencer Oliver published A Dweller on Two Planets, a book which claimed that survivors from a sunken continent called Lemuria were living in Mount Shasta. In the book, Lemurians lived in a series of complex tunnels beneath the mountain. Locals would sometimes see the creatures wandering outside the mountain in white robes. Then, in 1931, Harvey Spencer Lewis, using the pseudonym Weiser Spennel Serve, wrote a book about the hidden Lemurians of Mount Shasta. This book is widely regarded as the reason for the popularity for the legends of Lemurians in Mount Shasta. There have been many testimonials with Lemurians or other mysterious beings on the Mount Shasta, none of which have been substantiated. The two early testimonials created the large movement in the belief of Lemuria. In 1904, British prospector J.C. Brown claimed to find an underground city 11 miles deep in the mountain, full of gold, shields and mummies, some of which were 10 feet tall. When he told his story to others, the group compiled an 18-person team to explore the mountain for the underground city. But on the day the team was to set out, J.C. Brown disappeared. In the early 1930s, Guy Ballard reported to meet Saint-Germain on the mountain, which led to the founding of the I Am movement, which led to over 1 million followers in the late 1930s until Ballard's death. The belief in Lemuria in Mount Shasta and subsequent testimonials have been incorporated into numerous non-profit organizations, churches, etc., including I Am Activity, the Summit Lighthouse, Church Universal and Triumphant, and Cryon. According to esoteric lore, Atlantis and Lemuria arose regarding the development and evolution of other civilizations. The Lemurians believed that the other less evolved cultures should be left alone to continue their own evolution at their own pace according to their own understandings and pathway. Whereas the Atlanteans believed that less evolved cultures should be controlled by the two more evolved civilizations. Their argument over ideologies resulted in several thermonuclear wars which weakened both continental plates. When the wars were over and the dust had settled, there were no winners, only death, destruction and further debasing of the human spirit to the point that both sides realized the futility of such behavior. So the Lemurians decided to build a separate society inside Mount Shasta, where they would be safe from any disruptions on the surface of the earth. The city of Telos was built inside Mount Shasta and was designed to house 200,000 Lemurians. Today it is believed that Telos houses 1.5 million Lemurians inside Mount Shasta. Modern-day beliefs say that Lemuria can be felt and contacted through spiritual practices. The Lemurians were a highly evolved spiritual race, so they can be contacted through spiritual messages from believers. Mount Shasta has an unexplainable aura to it. Its energy is palpable, making it no mystery that people believe there is something happening deeper below the surface. The physical appearance of Lemurians has been debated for years. Some believe Lemurians look like highly evolved humans, while others believe they have more animalistic qualities. Although it is universally believed they are much taller beings than us, surface dwellers. In the end, it's easy to admit there is something different about Mount Shasta without knowing what it is exactly. Although it is this type of mysteries that make our world fun, interesting and exciting. And towards this mystery is that in our days many people trip to this place in search for Lemurians and the spiritual enlightenment of Mount Shasta.
Thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Join our spiritual community by clicking the subscribe button. If you found value on this video, please share it. Have a magnificent rest of the day.